What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV, aka Darth Apocalypse. Before I get into this video, shout out to the brother Elijah Merritt for the $15 donation via the Cash App. He had a video request and he wanted me to do a video on what if Arvydas Sabonis arrived in the NBA in 1986 instead of 1995. How good we have been, and would the ensuing order of events as far as championships and, you know, team success with the Portland Trailblazers, how would it affected other teams? How would things played out? Well, let me first say, for those of you who don't know, Arvydas Sabonis is the father of current, I think he's still with the Sacramento Kings, right? Domantas Sabonis. Um, as good as Domantas is, and he's good, Arvydas Sabonis was a legend. Um, One of the greatest international basketball players the game has ever seen. And while he did come to the NBA, I believe it was in 1995, 96, I think it was his first year. But at that point in time, Arvydas was 31, and he was a banged up old 31. So, by that point in time, he had had numerous knee and ankle issues. He had suffered two Achilles ruptures and three Achilles injuries by that point in time. Groin issues, knee issues. He had gained a lot of weight. By that point in time, Arvydas Sabonis was probably about 300 pounds. Whereas I think in his prime, he was maybe 260, 265. Now, mind you, he was 7'3". All right. So, but it wasn't just the size or anything that made him a great player. Clearly, that wasn't it. It was the skill set he had despite his size that made him extraordinary, especially for that era. Now, people might be looking up his stats and saying, he only shot 32.8% from downtown. He only, I don't want to say only, but he shot 79% from the line, which is good. But, it's not Steph Curry great. But you have to look at it like this. At that point in time, it was rare to see a center shoot from further than 20, 21 feet out. Like, that was considered range for a big man at that time. To step back and shoot threes, which most centers didn't really practice, and to be able to knock down one of three on average in an NBA game is impressive for a center. Excuse me. By the time he arrived in the NBA and played on those Portland Trailblazers teams in the late 90s, mid late 90s, early 2000s, he wasn't the same player. He was slow, plodding, didn't move very well on the court. But every now and then you saw flashes of vintage Arvydas Sabonis, in particular with the passing ability. And I guess the persons who you would compare him most to are Bill Walton and Nikola Jokic. But the problem is, like I said, we never saw him in his prime. And part of why he never was able to play is because the Soviet Union, first of all, the NBA wouldn't allow him to play earlier on when he went professional when he was 17 because he was too fucking young. The NBA didn't allow 17, 18-year-olds to play in the NBA back in the early 80s. Now, He was drafted by Portland in 1986. However, the Soviet Union blocked that. They didn't want him going over to play for the United States. You know, this is when we still were going through the Cold War, and you know, the United States and Russia were very competitive when it came to, you know, we know the space program and how competitive both nations were, and sports, you know, especially competitive. So they didn't want to give up, in their eyes, an asset like Arvydas Sabonis. So he didn't go over and play for the United States. Play for the NBA. He played over in the professional league that the Soviet Union had. But it was, I think, in '86 when he suffered his first Achilles injury. I don't think it was a rupture, but he suffered an injury. And 1 second here. But anyway, I'm back. So I think he suffered an Achilles rupture in '88, '89, and then he suffered another one in the '90s, early '90s, and gradually he suffered more and more sports-related injuries. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that the Soviet Union, they would now allow him to have the proper recovery time to be able to recover sufficiently from these types of injuries. So they contributed to his eventual physical breakdown. But, you know, if Arvydas Sabonis was able to join the Portland Trailblazers in 1986, you're adding a Hall of Fame caliber player in his prime, his early to mid 20s, to play alongside a prime Clyde Drexler. And I would surmise, considering that in real life Portland went to the finals in '90 and '92, with a prime Arvydas Sabonis, it's possible that the bad boy Pistons either just get one title, or perhaps if they face Portland both times, and not just LA and then Portland, perhaps they just are NBA finalists who are bridesmaids and never win a championship. So then that really alters Isaiah Thomas's legacy. I think it's quite probable that Michael Jordan wins fewer rings. I don't know exactly how many, but if without Arvydas Sabonis, Portland goes 6 games with the Chicago Bulls in 1992, then you have to wonder what are still relatively healthy Arvydas Sabonis, are they able to beat them in 7? That's a very good argument, very convincing argument that they do. But this is another thing you got to look at too, though. It was around '92, '93 when Clyde Drexler started suffering from his injuries. So he wasn't the same player after that. He went from being the guy that was giving you 25, 26, 27 points a night, you know, 6, 7 rebounds, 6, 7 assists, 2 steals, to a guy giving you more 19 rebounds, 19 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 1.5 steals, reduced efficiency, reduced explosiveness of himself. So if they were to win championships, I think it would be during that window between, I'd say, '89 to '92. So I would think they win maybe 2 championships. It's hard to say. Um, Maybe 3. I don't know. But I do think it'll be a short window. Another thing you can argue, too, is if he's playing in the NBA and he suffers these injuries, they're going to give him more, he's going to have more time to heal from these particular injuries, which lengthens his prime, obviously, and potentially his career. So that would could alter how when he actually retires. Because man, I remember, man, Arvydas Sabonis was also strong as a motherfucker, man. Like, I mean, yeah, we kind of remember him going up against Shaq, and Shaq was just ungodly strong, But outside of Shaq and Artis Gilmore, he would have been the strongest player in the league. He'd have been the strongest player in the league, but have the passing ability of a Bill Walton. Now, sometimes I think his shooting ability gets a little bit overstated, like as if he's like Dirk Nowitzki. But I do think that for that era, he'd have been a good outside shooter, 30 to 34% from downtown. I don't think he was taking a lot of them. A really good foul shooter for a big man in there, about 80%. Efficient, dominant low post scorer, but could face up and consistently hit mid range jumpers, and could occasionally step outside and shoot from outside. Um, but I think it's with his defense. That's the underrated part of his game. I recall him being, when he was more mobile, a good shot blocker. Now, I don't know if he was a King, Derrick Robinson level shot blocker, but I would imagine at 7'3", 265, he was a good shot blocker. Maybe 2.5 to 3 blocks a game. Um, yeah, man, I could definitely see history being altered if he was on that Portland team 10 years earlier. Um, I could also You could also make an argument that he takes rings or at least final appearances away from Magic. Does the Lakers go to the finals in '89 and '91? Hell, do they go in '88? You know, I think the '87 team was remarkable. That was just a legendary Laker team. But in '88, do they go? I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and say yeah. But by '89 and '90, '91, are the Lakers as dominant in the West? I don't, I don't think so. Um, One last point. With Arvydas Sabonis coming to the NBA in the mid 80s and him being a success, right? Let's say he's a tremendous success in the NBA. I don't know what his numbers would be because Portland, had a lot of different pieces, but I mean I think it's a safe assumption to make that he'd been a definite upgrade over Kevin Duckworth, right? To the point where I don't know if Kevin Duckworth is even on that team. Even as I don't think I think I wouldn't even think he's on that team. But I would assume Sabonis would give you at least 18 to 20 points, 10 to 11 rebounds, and 3 to 4 assists a night on that team. In that era, I think in his prime, when he's more nimble, more athletic, move better, I think he shoots 54, 55% from the field. I don't think he takes as many outside shots because it just wasn't in vogue yet for centers to shoot that many threes. Maybe, I give him like 50 or 63 point attempts. He might knock down, 10 to 15 of them. But, I definitely think that he'll be looked upon differently because he would have not just the international Hall of Fame career, but the NBA career would be Hall of Fame worthy too. And I was going to get to this. Do Portland trade Drazen Petrovic? Because in real life, Drazen kind of was an island upon himself there And with the depth chart the way it was, he just didn't have any room to develop. But with Sabonis's influence, does Drazen stay and develop on that team? Possibly. And we know how great a player he became when he played with the Nets. But anyway, that's all I got to say about it. Tell me what you got to say.